Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Maisy Mok. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Hong Kong daily Ming Pao is to stop publishing cartoons by longtime satirist Zunzi. The government tries again to give legal power to documents signed by terminally ill patients. And thousands of migrants gather along Mexico's northern border, preparing to dash into the United States. The Chinese-language daily Ming Pao will stop publishing the works of political cartoonist Zunzi on Sunday, ending a 40-year partnership. The decision follows criticisms by government officials that the cartoons were misleading. Janice Low reports.
An era ends on Sunday when cartoons by political satirist Zunzi will no longer appear in the Chinese-language Ming Pao newspaper. The Daily is stopping his illustrations and a 3-panel comic strip on current affairs after a run of 40 years. Ming Pao expressed its gratitude to the cartoonist for witnessing the changing times together with the newspaper. The move follows criticism of Zunzi's work by government officials since October last year. They accused the artist, whose real name is Wang Kei-kwan, of making what they called ridiculous accusations and of misleading the public. In yesterday's newspaper, Wang drew a cartoon related to the way people are picked for district fight crime and fire safety committees, which would nominate members for future district councils. Home Affairs Minister Alice Mack said, although the government welcomes different views, officials have to make clarifications so that people can learn the truth. She had earlier claimed that the comic strip distorted the facts. Mack accused Ming Pao of setting aside ethics and misleading readers on the overhaul of the district councils. Zunzi, who is 68, said he was saddened but not surprised by Ming Pao's decision, adding that he believed the public understood the reason. The Ming Pao Staff Association expressed regret and thanked the artist for his work for the newspaper since the 1980s. The association said contributions by columnists are part of Ming Pao's core values, which it hoped the public would safeguard while respecting the freedom of speech. Janice Low, HKIBC.
Security Chief Chris Tang has sidestepped questions on Ming Pao's decision to suspend Zunzi's cartoons, but said the government welcomes criticisms based on facts. Tang pointed out that an editor is being responsible if he stops anyone from making use of a platform to promote hatred against the government. He also accused the Journalists Association of making misleading claims. The city's biggest journalist group had earlier expressed sadness over Ming Pao's move. It claimed the incident showed that criticism is not allowed and further suppress free speech. A man has been sentenced to 3 years and 2 months in jail for a road accident that claimed 2 lives in San Po Kong on New Year's Eve 2 years ago. Ryan Ng had earlier pleaded guilty to dangerous driving, causing death and grievous bodily harm. Deputy District Judge Marinda Chow said Ng had put pedestrians at risk by speeding. She added that he was distracted by the loud music in his car. Ng was also banned from driving for 5 years. The crash killed a 23-year-old woman and a 63-year-old man and injured 3 other people. The government is making another attempt to give legal power to documents signed by severely ill patients who do not want to be revived when their health worsens. The documents are signed when the patient is mentally competent and applies when the person can no longer make rational decisions. The Health Bureau has proposed legislating advance directives which deny life-sustaining measures to patients in severe pain. Advance directives are signed when terminally or severely ill patients are mentally competent and apply when they cannot make rational decisions. Some terminally ill patients do not wish to receive cardiopulmonary resuscitation or CPR to avoid additional suffering. The Health Bureau told lawmakers that the number of advance directives from public hospital patients who did not want CPR jumped more than fivefold from 325 in 2013 to 1,742 in 2021. But because those documents do not have statutory power, there's uncertainty for patients and the medical sector.
There might be a problem when someone said, you please do not give me such and such treatment in case I become moribund and totally comatose. But then the family members may not entirely agree. So that may take some time for us to explain to the patient's relative that the decision has been made by the patient himself after due discussion with the doctors and nurses. So when it is now put into law, then that gives a bit more protection to and more give it more legal power for the doctor and nurses to implement what is given by the patient.
Only people aged 18 or above who are mentally competent can apply for an advance directive. The document has to be witnessed by two people who cannot inherit from the signatory. One witness has to be a doctor. Lawmakers will discuss the proposal tomorrow, and the government plans to submit a bill to the Legislative Council within this year. The proposal was put on hold in 2010 when the subject was considered taboo by the public. But in a public consultation in 2019, the government found that there are signs of growing acceptance. Dozens of countries, including Australia, Canada, and Singapore, have legislated advance directives. An environmental impact assessment on building public housing flats on parts of the Fanlang Golf Course has been conditionally approved. The Environmental Protection Department said the Civil Engineering and Development Department has to review and revise the layout plan to preserve 0.4 hectares of woodland. Another condition is that a detailed plan on minimizing the impact on tree preservation and the landscape has to be submitted. The additional information is required before 12,000 public housing flats can be built. Overseas, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has threatened rioting protesters with severe punishment if they continue to damage public property. In a televised address, Shahbaz Sharif branded those who targeted public property as terrorists. Violent protests erupted across Pakistan after former Prime Minister Imran Khan was arrested on Tuesday on corruption charges. If convicted, Khan will be barred from contesting a general election, which is due later this year. Thousands of migrants are camping at the Mexican border, waiting for the chance to enter the United States. But security has been tightened and new rules have been introduced to prevent a surge of people across the frontier. Sachin Katvi reports.
The U.S. border with Mexico is tense as migrants from Latin America try desperately to reach the United States. They hope to take advantage of the expiry of one law and make a dash across the border before another law stops them.
We are seeing a lot more females with children. If you take a look, we're looking at really small, like babies, to anywhere from 2, 3 years old, 5, 6, maybe 10 years old. And that is a clear change that we're seeing. That earlier, last week, we were seeing predominantly males.
Hundreds of U.S. troops have arrived at the frontier to handle the influx. Title 42, which allows the expulsion of migrants on COVID grounds during the Trump era, expires within hours. But under the new rules, the Biden administration will deport anyone entering the U.S. illegally and ban them from seeking asylum for 5 years. They could also face criminal prosecution. Those wishing to seek asylum must first seek refuge in any country which they have passed through before showing up at the Mexican border. Overcrowded detention centers and limited resources to control the influx angered sheriffs of border towns in the state of Arizona.
It is my opinion our government has failed its people. It has failed its people for decades now because the insecurity of our border is not is a federal responsibility, but it has become a local problem. The failure to properly address issues of unlawful immigration at our border bleeds into our communities.
Despite the new rules, the migrants appear determined to seek a better life in the United States. Sachin Katwi, HKIBC.
Calls are growing for the resignation of embattled U.S. lawmaker George Santos, who has pleaded not guilty to fraud, money laundering, and theft of public funds.
I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep fighting for what I believe in. I'm going to keep fighting to represent my district. I'm going to keep fighting to deliver results. And now I have to keep fighting to deliver, to defend my innocence, and I'm going to do that.
Governor Hochul today said you should...
A court in New York released Santos on a bond of $500,000 US until his next appearance at the end of June. The Republican lawmaker claims to be the victim of a witch hunt. Since his election in November, he has been dogged by controversy. Allegations against him include lying about his resume and using political donations to support his lifestyle.
The Republican member of Congress, purportedly known as George Santos, is entitled to the presumption of innocence, just like anyone else in America, in a criminal court of law. The House is not a criminal court of law. The House has its own rules. The House can choose to expel a member. Robert Garcia has put forward a bill to do that. If Speaker McCarthy were to put that bill on the floor, then I would vote for it.
Consumer prices on the mainland have risen at their slowest pace in more than 2 years, while factory deflation widened. Cheaper food saw the consumer price index rising by only 0.1% last month from a year earlier, compared with a 0.7% gain in March. The producer price index declined 3.6%, its fastest pace in 3 years. The figures gave rise to speculation that the central bank may intervene to spur demand. The cost of overnight borrowing in Hong Kong has jumped to a 16-year high. The interbank offered rate, or HIBOR, climbed 37 basis points today to 4.81%. This comes as the monetary authority drains liquidity from the banking system to boost the Hong Kong dollar. The local unit has come under pressure as hedge funds borrow the Hong Kong dollar cheaply and invest in currencies that pay higher interest. Now let's take a look at the market. The Hang Seng Index ended the day down by 18 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tracker Fund was down 1 cent, Tencent was down $3.20, while Meituan was down 50 cents. BYD Company was up $2.80, JD.com was down 60 cents. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, euro is at 8.57, pound sterling is at 9.87, and the Australian dollar is at 5.28. Over to the UK market, the London FTSE is currently down 22 points. On to the weather now. It will be mainly cloudy tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 23 and 26 degrees. Bring along your umbrella as the rain will last through the weekend. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Maisy Mok. Thanks for watching. Good night.